There's something different about people who used ration stamps for food as children. In a world of endless grocery store choices and overnight delivery, these individuals carry a relationship with resources that experts are only now beginning to understand, and it shaped their psychology in ways that created the most resourceful generation in modern history. Let's start with something that's impossible to imagine today. Picture yourself at 6 years old in 1943. Your mother hands you a small booklet filled with colored stamps and says, "Hold on to these tight. Without them, we can't buy sugar for your birthday cake." Those little squares of paper weren't just stamps. They were the difference between eating and going hungry. You'd learned early that everything good was limited. Sugar came in tiny amounts, carefully measured. Meat appeared on your table maybe twice a week if you were lucky. Coffee was something adults talked about missing, the way children today might miss their favorite video game. But this wasn't poverty. This was patriotism. This was everyone doing their part. Think about what happened to your developing brain during those rationing years. Every trip to the grocery store became a lesson in mathematics, planning, and priorities. You learned to count stamps before you counted money. You discovered that wanting something didn't mean you could have it, even if you had the cash to pay for it. Your mother would sit at the kitchen table every Sunday, planning the week's meals around those little colored squares. Red stamps for meat, blue stamps for processed foods, brown stamps for shoes. You watched her calculate and recalculate, making sure every meal stretched every resource as far as possible. This created what economists call cognitive scarcity processing. But for you, it was just Tuesday. You learned that waste wasn't just wrong, it was unpatriotic. That saving scraps could help win the war. That every choice had consequences, not just for your family, but for soldiers overseas who depended on what you didn't use. Now imagine standing in line at the butcher shop with your mother. She's holding her ration book, calculating whether to use this week's stamps on a small roast for Sunday dinner, or save them for ground beef that might last 3 meals. You're watching this decision-making process, absorbing lessons about trade-offs that most children never learn. The butcher looks at your stamps, weighs the meat carefully, and tears out exactly the right amount. No waste, no extras, no throw in a little more for the kid. Everything was measured, everything was accounted for. Everything had value that extended beyond your family's kitchen table. But here's what made this experience psychologically profound. You weren't just learning about scarcity. You were learning about collective sacrifice. Your neighbors had the same ration books. Your teacher explained why sugar was scarce. Your older brother might have written from overseas about how rationing at home meant better supplies for troops abroad. Psychologists call this civic resource consciousness. Children who grew up with rationing developed an understanding that individual consumption affects collective well-being, that personal choices have community consequences, that sometimes doing without is how you contribute to something larger than yourself. Think about how this shaped your relationship with food itself. Every meal became precious because it represented careful planning and scarce resources. Leaving food on your plate wasn't just wasteful, it was disrespectful to everyone who had sacrificed to put it there. You learned to eat everything, save everything, repurpose everything. This created what behavioral psychologists call resource optimization thinking. Unlike generations raised with abundance, you learned to see potential in everything. Leftover bread became breadcrumbs, meat bones became soup stock. Nothing with any possible use could be thrown away. But the psychological impact went deeper than just food conservation. Rationing taught you about delayed gratification in ways that no parenting technique could match. When sugar was limited, cookies became special occasions. When meat was scarce, Sunday dinner became celebration. When chocolate was rare, a single piece became treasure. You learned that anticipation makes everything better, that waiting for something increases its value, that the best things in life aren't available on demand, but require patience, planning, and appreciation when they finally arrive. Now imagine the war ending in 1945. Suddenly, rationing is over. Stores have sugar again. Meat is available. You can buy as much as you want of almost anything. But something interesting happens in your psychology. The abundance doesn't make you wasteful. It makes you grateful. This experience created what researchers call abundance appreciation syndrome. People who lived through rationing never take plenty for granted. They understand that resources can disappear, that abundance is temporary, that waste is not just careless but potentially catastrophic. Decades later, you're still the person who saves aluminum foil, who plans meals around what needs to be used up first, who can make a satisfying dinner from whatever happens to be in the pantry, who never throws away anything that might have future value. When younger people ask how your generation developed such careful spending habits, such resourcefulness, such ability to make do with less, now you know, it's not just frugality. It's not just a different era. It's the psychological legacy of learning that resources are precious, choices have consequences, and individual restraint serves collective good. Those ration stamp books didn't just limit your childhood consumption, they taught you that conservation is patriotism, that waste is waste whether there's a war on or not, that the difference between want and need is one of the most important distinctions a human being can make. You learned to find satisfaction in making things last, pride in creative solutions, joy in meals that stretched ingredients into something delicious. These weren't survival skills for hard times, they were life skills for all times. But perhaps most importantly, rationing taught you that personal sacrifice for collective benefit isn't just possible, it's noble. That sometimes the best way to help others is to use less yourself. That abundance shared wisely lasts longer than abundance consumed quickly. The ration stamp generation carries something precious and increasingly rare, the understanding that enough is a decision, not an amount. That waste is a choice, not an inevitability. That resourcefulness is a virtue, not a necessity born of poverty. When you watch modern society struggle with overconsumption, waste, and environmental crisis, you carry solutions in your bones, not because you're old-fashioned, but because you learned early that every resource has limits, every choice has consequences, and every person has the power to use less so others can have more. Drop a comment and share your ration stamp story. Do you remember going to the store with those little books? What did your family do without? How did rationing change the way you think about waste and resources today? And if this resonated with you, hit like and subscribe because we dive deep into the psychology that explains how your unique childhood experiences shaped the remarkable resourcefulness you carry today. See you next time.